Hello, everyone. My name is Larry, and I'm at the Village Church. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you all today. I'll be preaching from the fourth saying on the cross, Matthew 27:46, which reads, "In about the ninth hour, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, saying, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani." That is, my God, why have you forsaken me? Throughout the Old Testament, there was a promise that was repeated over and over and over again from generation to generation, which was that God is a God who will never leave nor forsake his people. We see this all over the place. When Jacob, for example, was on the run from his brother Esau, Esau was trying to kill him. Jacob was by himself. God appeared to him in a dream and said in Genesis 28:15, "Behold, I am with you and will keep you wherever you go and will bring you back to this land, for I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." In Deuteronomy 31:6, Moses is giving a final speech to Israel. This is his final retirement speech to Israel. And he repeats the same promise. He says, "It is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you." When Joshua was installed as the new leader of Israel, God made the same exact promise to Joshua. In Joshua 1:5, "Just as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will not leave you or forsake you." And Solomon was building this temple in the book of 1 Kings. God made the same promise to him as well. 1 Kings 6:13, God says, "And I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not forsake my people Israel." This never forsaking aspect of God's character was repeated multiple times. It's also included in the Psalms. For example, in Psalm 94:14, the writer sings, "For the Lord will not forsake his people. He will not abandon his heritage." And this is also repeated multiple times through the prophets. For example, in Isaiah 41:17, God promises, "When the poor and needy seek water, and there is none, and the tongue is parched with thirst, I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them." All throughout the Old Testament, God repeatedly affirms this promise over and over that he is a God who never leaves nor forsakes his people. It is with great irony, then, that we come to the words of Matthew 27:46, in which Jesus says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" If it is in God's character to never forsake his people, if that is who we know God to be, then surely God will never forsake his only Son, his one and only eternal Son, whom he loves since before the foundations of the world. But here in Matthew 27, we see that Jesus, the Son of God, was hanging on the cross, mocked, naked, tortured, beaten half to death, and God abandons him on the cross. These words of Jesus echo Psalm 22, 1-2, in which David cries out something very similar. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from saving me from the words of my groaning? Oh my God, I cry by day, but you do not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. David's words echo what many of us often feel when we are suffering as well. When we go through sufferings of different kinds, sometimes we may feel forsaken by God. We may feel unheard. We may feel restless. We sometimes wonder whether God listens to us, whether God cares for us, whether God is even real. And I think for some of us, there is a deeper underlying fear behind our anxiety that God has abandoned us, and that is that we deserve it. We fear that God actually has forsaken us, and it is our fault that God has forsaken us. We screwed up too many times. We let things slide too many times. We were lazy or arrogant or hateful or selfish too many times, there are too many strikes on our record. And as a result, God has given up on us. He has said, this man or woman is a lost cause. And so he's abandoned us and he's forsaken us. That's our deep underlying fear. But Jesus never sinned. He never had any strikes on his record. So why was it that Jesus felt abandoned on the cross? Well, I believe that the abandonment of Jesus on the cross, it represents two things for us. And I think these two things we can take away. The first is that this abandonment of Jesus on the cross is a demonstration of solidarity. In other words, it is Jesus' way of saying, do you ever feel forsaken or abandoned? You are not alone. I felt it too. If you ever experience abandonment, loneliness, being in the midst of suffering and pain and feeling like nobody else in this world understands, you can look to Jesus and go, Jesus understands, because he was there on that cross. And so to all who feel forsaken and unheard, you're not the only one. Jesus experienced exactly what you feel and to an infinitely greater magnitude. And so when you feel alone, you can run to him. He understands. And secondly, and I would say more importantly, what the abandonment of Jesus on the cross represents is the assurance of redemption. The assurance of redemption. You see, Jesus, his death on the cross wasn't just a display of inspiring martyrdom. There are many inspiring people who died in our history, and we can look at many of these heroes throughout our history. We can go, that was a great man. He died a glorious death. There's a lot I can learn from that person's life. But Jesus' death was fundamentally different from all these other deaths, in which he flipped the whole spiritual realm upside down when he died. Namely, this is what he did. We who were once forsaken by God have now been brought into the family of God. How is it possible that we who were once forsaken enemies of God could be adopted into his family? It is only possible because Jesus, who was once the eternal Son of God, and he still is, but he temporarily gave up a relationship status with God to be temporarily abandoned on that cross, temporarily seen as a forsaken enemy of God. And that is how we were adopted into God's family. You see, we as followers of Jesus can now claim God's promise to never leave us or forsake us only because God temporarily abandoned Jesus on the cross. Jesus traded in his intimacy with God for a moment of abandonment on the cross so that we who deserve abandonment can now have intimacy with God forever. All the strikes that God had against us that were on our record were laid on Jesus' shoulders. All of our sins, all of our faults, all of our screw-ups placed on the shoulders of Jesus so that when God abandoned Jesus on the cross, he also abandoned the rest of our sins there too. On the cross, Jesus cried out in pain, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And here's the answer. God forsook Jesus on the cross so that he would never leave nor forsake you.